Once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over. Donald Trump announced on Thursday that the U.S. is out of the Paris Climate Change Accord, while EU leaders are still grappling with the aftermath of the president's visit to the G7 last week. What is happening to the established global order now that America seems to be moving in a more independent direction? To discuss, I'm joined by Deputy Assistant to the President. Please welcome back to the program, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Great to have you here.
Great to be back.
Now, I have to share this with you and the audience. In announcing his withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement, the president put it this way. Watch.
My job as president is to do everything within my power to give America a level playing field and to create the economic, regulatory, and tax structures that make America the most prosperous and productive country on earth. I was elected to represent the citizens of Pittsburgh, not Paris.
There is gnashing of teeth all over Washington, Sebastian Gorka, reacting to statements like that. What was the intention of this? And is it, as President Obama suggested in a statement today, an abdication of American leadership in the world?
You know what it was, Raymond? I don't think it's shocking, but it was a politician keeping his promises. I know that's unheard of.
I don't know why everybody was rending garments. He did promise this again and again and again during the last few months.
He's promised many things, to rebuild the military, to build a wall, to review how we handle immigration to this nation. And one of the things he also promised was to remove ourselves from this accord. And yet again, he has executed on his campaign commitments. He said very explicitly, this is a bad deal, just like the Iran deal. It's not good for America. It's not good for Americans. And it doesn't even achieve its stated goals. I mean,
what is the goal? The goal is to reduce the temperature by
a fraction of a degree, which is laudable if it were actually the function of the treaty. But the treaty is really a redistribution of wealth exercise. It would have cost American taxpayers $3 trillion over the next few decades. It committed us, without congressional mandate, to $3 billion into the climate change fund. This is just a bad deal. And there was no way to enforce it if other nations, who are the real polluters,
China, India,
right, didn't abide by it. There was no mechanism. So it's taking money away from America, taking jobs away from America, and the president said this is wrong. He is the president of the citizens of Pittsburgh, not Paris.
But what does it tell us about the United States' position on the global stage now? Where are we? Some are saying, and I've spoken to some of our European allies, they say, how can you take the United States seriously in areas like security or terrorism when they walk away from an agreement like this?
I'd say look in the mirror. I'd say those nations depend upon America. Look, any nation that has a trade deficit with America, this doesn't change anything. You can't ignore America. This is a nation with 12 nuclear aircraft carriers. Because we keep our commitment doesn't undermine our global role on the stage. Look at what the president achieved in just his last 10-day visit, his first visit across the Middle East and Europe. That's leadership, and he's doing it domestically as well as internationally.
He did leave a door open, it seems, to renegotiating this accord. Is that a good idea?
Look, he is concerned with the broader question
of climate change.
Of climate change and also development, right? He knows as a businessman that growth, that we can grow the pie. This isn't a zero-sum game. So we have to think about the consequences of how that is done. Is it done in ways that are detrimental to the environment or not? As a result, he said, look, we're open. We can come back in. He said we can come back in if the conditions change or simply renegotiate. So this isn't about climate science, Raymond. It's about a bad deal for America.
The Vatican, or a Vatican representative this week, head of the Pontifical Academy for Sciences, said if the president walks away from this Paris Accord, a major goal for Pope Francis, it would be a slap in the face to the Vatican. Is it?
I don't think so. I think if you look at what happened in the Vatican recently, I think the sincerity, after that discussion, they had the last discussion with the pontiff, the sincerity with which the president said, I'm going to work to the goal of peace, and he's redoubling his efforts. This isn't about one event in the Rose Garden. It's about sovereignty, It's about American promises to American voters, and I don't think it will have a detrimental effect with the Vatican.
Following the G7 meeting, and I want to return to that moment with our European allies, Angela Merkel, the German premier, said, this is a moment when we can no longer rely on, and I'm paraphrasing,
yes,
the United States. We are going to have to fight for our own future. Was that the intention of the president, telling the allies it's time for you to pay up, pay the commitments, pay your NATO dues, which 23 of the 28 nations have not reached those obligations in the last few years?
If you're a member of a club in which 80% of the membership didn't pay their dues, wouldn't you have an issue with paying the dues?
Yeah, well,
I mean, he's standing in the center of this beautiful new headquarters that basically the United States funded, and he has every right to say, look, guys, we're your buddies, we're your friends, but how about some equitable burden sharing? That's all that it's about. It's all about everybody taking their fair share of the common burden.
But there was no mention, the president did not mention Article 5 of the NATO agreement, which is you defend your allies when they're imperiled. Is the United States in any way walking away from that commitment?
Not at all. The absurdity of going to NATO and being surrounded by your fellow NATO heads of state and somehow making that to be not about NATO and common defense. It's like the Holocaust memorial statement somehow not being about the Holocaust because we didn't explicitly say the word Jewish. It's asinine. It's absurd. Of course we maintain our commitment to our allies.
Let's talk about refugees for a moment. I know the president signed that executive order trying to stop refugees from certain hot spots in the Middle East from coming to the United States. That's been tied up in the courts, and so far, since he's been inaugurated, 16,249 refugees have come into the United States, primarily from Iraq and Syria. Now, I know you all have stepped up some new vetting processes. What do those look like? How assured are you that that will keep Americans safe?
Let me put it this way. We have unshackled the people whose job it is to do this. Think of just one example under the Obama administration. When somebody applied to be an immigrant here, the State Department was told, this was an Obama regulation, it had nothing to do with prior systems, you are prohibited from looking at that applicant's public Facebook postings because that somehow impinges upon their privacy. Well, that's Alice in Wonderland. That's absurd. So these are the things that we have dismantled and replaced with proper procedures to look at who these people are and to vet them in ways that comport with our national security.
You've spent a lot of your career, in fact, you've written books about fighting jihad and the jihadi threat. We saw a car bombing in Kabul this week. We keep seeing the city of Marawi in the Philippines under attack by an ISIS-related group.
Yep.
Is this the new battlefield? Is the Philippines the new battlefield for ISIS?
I wouldn't look at one specific region. I'd take a step back and listen to what the president said in Saudi Arabia. He didn't talk just about ISIS. We don't talk just about Al-Qaeda. We're not obsessing about individuals or organizations. We're talking about radical Islamic terrorism, and that is a global phenomena, whether it's in the Sulawesi region, whether it's in Nigeria, whether it's in the Sinai, or whether it's in Fort Hood. This is a global phenomena, and we will treat it as such.
You mentioned the president's trip to Saudi Arabia, to the Middle East. This was a bold play. I was just reading a biography of Reagan, the latter part of it, and you see at the time when he met with Pope John Paul II, this was sort of scoffed at. Why would he? What's the Pope going to do here? In fact, the Pope ended up being the first domino to fall, his native Poland, and then the whole of communism came crashing down. What is the president's play here, reaching out to the three major religions in the world, Islam, Christianity, Judaism? What is he attempting to do? What is the spiritual dimension of this fight against ISIS and jihadism?
Wonderful question. At its heart, it's about recognizing the nature of the problem and talking about it truthfully, without a veil, without a filter of political correctness.
That it's a religious problem at its core?
Right. I mean, think about it. What did he say? He was in the heart of Islam, the Hijaz, the land of Mecca and Medina, in front of more than 50 Arab Muslim leaders. And he said, you, gentlemen, must put your house in order. You must drive, quote unquote, the extremists and the terrorists from your houses of worship and your communities.
And the earth.
and the earth. I had a woman from the region, tell me yesterday, we, meaning the Muslim Arab world, have been waiting for this speech for 16 years. This was the tear down the wall equivalent for that part of the world. So it was a recognition, and he started the speech with this. This is a war of good versus evil. This is about evil incarnate walking the earth, not unemployment, not lack of education. So it was setting the record straight for what the threat is and how we're going to deal with it.
Are the Saudis, the kingdom, are they a proper ally in this war, in that these are the people who fund and are home to Wahhabism? This is the theological root, in fact, the fountain of jihadism that we see, and ISIS all over the world. Why are they the people we're going to fight this battle when it seems they're the fomenters and indeed the nurturers of this ideology and the theology that fuels it?
These issues are not carved in stone. So the House of Saud did ally with Ibn Wahhab when the kingdom was first established. But the propagation of a fundamental and globally exported fundamental message, that is not something that lasts forever. Why do we know this? Because Al-Qaeda took its war to Saudi Arabia. After 05, they started killing Saudi officials on Saudi soil. That's the point at which the kingdom said, look, we're as much of a target. In fact, we may be more of a target because we are deemed to be apostates, puppets of the West. So things have changed. We have to solidify that tacking of the direction, but it is going in the right direction.
You think they'll moderate Wahhabism or attempt to within the kingdom?
I think that they have a role, their most important role to play is what they're doing outside of the kingdom, their influence on others, because again, this is the home of Mecca and Medina. Outside of the Al-Azhar in Cairo, this is the most important piece of real estate in the Islamic world.
Right, absolutely. Dr. Sebastian Gorka, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We will check in the days ahead.